So in North America, in August 14th, 1989, the Sega Genesis came out and hit the shores. It was quite a popular and commercial success prior to that of the original release of the Game Boy, which was about 14 days prior to that, which is July 31st, 1989. So two of these particular consoles share a birthday, which is their 25th anniversary, which I will have a Game Boy sort of birthday bash kind of overview thing coming up soon along with this video, so stay tuned for that one as well. But with this video, I'm going to talk very vaguely. I'm not going to be too in-depth, because again, I don't want to sit here all day and bore you to death with all this stuff. But I'm going to show you examples of gameplays from certain games. I'm going to show you some of the hardware I originally owned when I was a kid, as well as just go over a few things here and there. So you're going to most likely see a camera aimed at my bed and me rambling on about, you know, the various things I remember from my childhood with the console and all that, and mention some of my favorite games for said console. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So, before there was the PlayStation 4 and all that, there was other consoles too. And one of the first consoles that I've initially had next to the Nintendo Entertainment System, which was technically my brother's to a margin line, was this right here, which was the Sega Genesis. Now, the Sega Genesis right here, it's been through some hell and high water, let me tell you, at least as a model right here, which is the high definition graphics one. Now, when my family originally got this, like, we played the crap out of it. Like, everybody in the household played it. My dad played it. My brother played it. Myself, I played it. We bought and rented games with it. And it was just such a great console because it drew us all together. And I'm trying to find the converter. There it is. Now, we had a Sega Master System as well. Like, my father purchased one personally, so he got himself Ys and all that. So my dad was actually the originator in my household of playing Ys. Now, a funny story about that, which I will guess kind of embarrassed my brother a little bit with it, but, you know, it wasn't necessarily his fault. He didn't mean it and all that, so I'm not here to say it was completely his fault. It just shit happens kind of thing. So, alright. Now, this is the top base right here, and obviously it goes in the Sega Genesis. We did not have this at the time when it came out, or this particular thing came out. So, alright, the Sega Master System, we had that. My dad got Ys. He played it, and he got up to a point where there was a chamber where there was no air, no oxygen. You have to get through the area, the corridor, as quickly as possible and get to the other end where there's oxygen. So, what my brother did was save it, which we don't understand why he did this. He saved it in the middle of the room where it had basically no life left, and he meant to reload it, but instead he saved it. So we ended up killing my dad's character permanently, so he couldn't get back. You know, he didn't want to. My dad didn't really want to start over, so he just said fuck it, and he was like, screw it, I'm not gonna bother anymore. So my poor dad, save all screwed up and everything. And I don't know, again, it was just a funny memory after you look back at it, because the poor dad comes home from work, he goes, what happened to my save? My brother goes, I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't mean it. Dad, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean that. You know, so he basically, again, my brother's like, you know, hon, I wish that'd go away. So, I don't know, it's just sort of a funny little memory about the Sega Master System. Just because I was talking about the power base converter here, which, the cool thing about the Sega Genesis is it had this power base too. So you could play Sega Master System games, which was one of the original backwards compatible elements for consoles at the time. Next to the Super Nintendo, which also had the Super Game Boy, which was also pretty cool too. You could play your Game Boy games on the Super Nintendo. That was awesome. Play it on your big screen. Great idea. I mean, the Sega Master System technically had backwards compatibility / it had with the Game Gear. Even though technically the Game Gear and the Sega Master System are technically the same thing. Mind blown. But, again, it was just an interesting, crazy time. They had all kinds of gadgets and accessories with the Sega Genesis, which the Sega CD was technically an attachment / its own little console, which also came out, which it's over here, I'm not going to pick it up. you guys get what the heck the Sega CD looks like, but again, the Sega Genesis had a long lifespan. It still goes on to today with app games and all that. We're basically taking these clone systems, which are handheld or you plug and play into your TVs, which don't have the SD card thing where you can put ROMs in there and all that. Only the handheld version did. But it's an ironic thing that this console still has a shelf life to this date via what the, as I just mentioned, clone systems. The same thing can be said about the Game Boy and everything else, and technically because of the whole virtual console thing, which is an emulation process through modern consoles, as we most only know, and we don't really care too much about those. We care about them enough knowing that these games are fun and you want to go back to them in all that nature, but having the original Sega Genesis console, it tells you one thing. It was such a good console, most people kept it. And that's basically what happened here. We kept it in the best condition we can even keep it. So, the console itself had a lot of great games, like Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Sonic and Knuckles, which is actually quite an interesting little cartridge in itself. When you played Part 3, you could actually play as Knuckles in this one. I believe it was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 could actually play as Knuckles as well. I can't remember if that was confirmed or not. Yeah, my brain went derp when I was prior to recording this. I didn't want to check it. I was just like, Rrr. So if it did, it did. Can't remember. Not gonna go look. So, ooh. So as you can see right there, great attachments and all kinds of interesting and innovative and just awesome ideas added to the Sega Genesis. It was more of an innovative time around the 4th generation of consoles. Can be said about, or same, can be said about the Game Boy and everything else in between. So, without the Sega Genesis, without the original Nintendo, there would have been no competition. Without no competition, there would not have been a thriving gaming market, as we kind of have today. Even though today's market's it's diminishing slightly. It is. It just is because the well's been too much sucked from, so to speak, so now we're kind of seeing a slowing process where it's panic mode for most console companies. So, it's just a great nostalgic moment to realize we can go back to at least look at the 4th generation of consoles and say, that was a great time in consoles. We could still have access to those consoles, same with computers like Amigas and a Commodore and all that nature, but going back to at least the console side of things was always a great thing for me. So I'd like to wish Sega Genesis a very happy birthday, and I'd like to say everyone, thank you for all for watching. Touch my nipples. See you later. you enjoyed today's broadcast, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more videos and podcasts to come. Also, down below, be sure to follow me on a few of the social media outlets I am a part of. As always, thank you humbly for watching and leaving your feedback.